Drea, can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, cool beans. Okay, it's noon and I want to get us started. I think Ann is going to introduce me. I need no introduction. And we are going to spend a little time giving justice. I will warn author. So in this meeting, we're going to try to give myself 7 minutes to introduce some of the thought leaders that are in the room. So my job will be to describe to you why I think we are here, then to introduce some of those thought leaders. Those of you that are in I want to thank you very much for showing your face while we sit here. And I would like to start. I would like to start with a question for those of you out there. And the question is, when you see this term, juvenile justice, what comes to mind? And if you start throwing out answers, it's really magical things on David will succeed. You see that? It's like a thought bubble, like people do that. So when you think of juvenile justice, what comes to mind? Say that again. The correction center. What else?
Court. Yeah.
Court. What else? Probation. Railroad. Somebody had managed students. Mind control. What comes to mind? This kind of way. What comes to mind?
Teenagers need books.
Teenagers need books. Yes. You smile, lady. Yeah. Juvenile justice, what is it? Better programs. Better programs, community programs. Anything else from this? The eating sheet over here, anything else? Community service. How about this? Juvenile justice.
The Swedish system seems better.
The Swedish system, but I got a little fish. The Swedish system seems better. How about this group right here? Disparities.
I think about poverty.
Poverty. Okay, man, I wish we had more time. Folks in the back, along the back, juvenile justice, what is it? Say that again. Juvenile justice from adult justice. I only do this to see Michael do this. And when you get warmed up, we'll start drawing David, you'll start drawing pictures. Yes. Mass incarceration. Mass incarceration. Anything else comes to mind, you think of juvenile? Someone say school prison pipeline. All right. Court ordered services. Okay, anything else? Anything else? When you think of juvenile justice, what is it that you think of? Okay, all right, so your job is to make sure that I don't go any longer than about 12 there. All right, is that fair? Okay. So my name is Sam Smith, and I was dragged into this work by a very good friend, and that friend and some of our colleagues are here. So there are folks here from the organization called the Illinois Association of Juvenile Justice Council. You all can wave and IAJC. So these are folks that work across the state around developing juvenile justice council. And about 3 years ago, a very good friend, Leah Graham, invited me about the IAJJC and their work. And so for the past 2 years, I have been involved in hosting or convening conversations about juvenile justice. And in that time, I've met some amazing people, learned a lot of things about this thing we call juvenile justice. And you're going to meet some of the thought leaders that I have been in conversation with about thinking about juvenile justice in Champaign County. I want to back up and thank the Y for hosting this Friday forum. And the focus of this Friday forum is social justice in community. Is that correct, Ian? And so when I think about what social justice is, I guess there are lots of ways to describe that. Just last night, what came to mind for me was my background as a social worker and this idea that we had in social work about respect for and value of human dignity and human beings. And that means every human being to recognize the inherent worth of every person. So you can look down your eyes and you can look around this room and you can see human beings from different life experiences, different social groups, different genders. And part of our practice and our core belief is to value each and every one of those human beings and their perspectives. The other part of our title, Juvenile Justice in Champaign County, Wicked Possibilities. The idea of a wicked possibility comes from a couple of urban planners that coined this term in 1973. And they coined this term in thinking about problem solving. And those designers, those urban planners were asking us to consider that there are different kinds of problems. Often we are accustomed to thinking about problems that are complex. So for example, my friend Mike in here, if Mike and I were trying to decide what to do on Saturday night, the two of us might have different ideas. If we added all of the other people in this pod, it becomes much more complex. It becomes a complex problem, but there may be lots of ideas. However, these urban planners had a particular thought in mind about wicked problems. Wicked problems are not simple problems. They don't have an easy yes or no answer. Wicked problems are maybe less bad or less good. So I'm suggesting that juvenile justice in Champaign County, whatever that is a wicked problem. And that requires us to entertain lots of different kinds of solutions from lots of different kinds of perspectives. So what I'm going to ask you to do over the next 40 minutes is, as you listen to our thought leaders, I want you to remember that whatever this thing is that we call juvenile justice, it is a wicked problem. One of the other things that defines a problem as wicked is the idea that there may be many different kinds of stakeholders. People may stand in very different positions and relationships to that problem. And again, going back to our core value that we all matter, all of our perspectives matter, then a wicked problem, wicked solution takes into account all of these different perspectives and values and contributions. And again, doesn't seek to solve the problem forever. One of my favorite writers is Malcolm Gladwell, and Gladwell, in one of his books, talks about two kinds of problems. There are problems that we can solve, and then there are problems that we have to learn to manage. I was trying to think of a good example of that this morning. The example that I thought of was that if you stepped on a thorn, right? Yeah, one problem is that you have a thorn in your foot, right? That's a problem you can solve. You can pull the thorn out of your foot and it's gone. But there's a problem to manage, which is there a risk of infection? Is your foot painful? So how you then live with that injury to your foot is a problem that we manage. I would ask you to consider whether or not this thing we call juvenile justice is a problem that we solve, or is it a problem that we manage? And what's the difference between managing something difficult and then resolving it and moving on? So with that, I'm at my 10 minutes. What I'd like to do is I would like to introduce our panelists. And I don't have bios on these people, so I will introduce them from my heart. And the four people that you are going to meet, I think of as thought leaders. I can consult with them. We've been in this conversation about juvenile justice work, some much longer than others. And I'm really very excited for you to meet them. Because our time is short, this is how we have structured the next 40 minutes or so. Each of the thought leaders is going to have about 5 minutes, very short amount of time. And in those 5 minutes, they will address 3 questions. What is your mission and your role around juvenile justice? Hopefully in that they will introduce themselves. What are obstacles or challenges to you accomplishing or meeting that mission? And then the final question is, what is one wicked partnership, possibility, project, policy change that you would love to see in relationship with juvenile justice? So very quickly, I'm going to do just a very brief introduction. I'll start with my very good friend, Andrea Hall. Andrea is the executive director of the Illinois Justice Commission, which is a statewide organization that has all kinds of responsibilities for developing policy, monitoring programs, distributing funds across the state related to juvenile justice. Karen Sims, would you wave? Karen Sims is an amazing community asset in several communities. She's the founder of an organization called Champaign Trauma Resiliency Initiative. I did all that. Many of you know her amazing work. Maurice Hayes, my brother from another mother, is the current executive director of the Anti-Violence Collective and formerly incarcerated person. And if you want to talk to someone who knows a hell of a lot about young Black people, street life, protecting them and saving them, this is your guy, my man, Maurice Hayes. And finally, Mike Williams is the director of Champaign County Probation and Court Services. Mike and I knew each other before we were both grade. So we go back 30 years, and he has been in this community doing probation and court services related for a very long time. So those are going to be our 4 thought leaders for the next 25 minutes. They each have about 5 minutes. And we will begin with Ms. Rhea Hall.
All right, can everyone hear me? Can you hear?
Karen, Mike, Maurice, you all want to take a seat up here? You don't have to, Maurice, I've volunteered you, so.
Are you able to hear me?
Up there, yeah.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Drea Hall, Executive Director of the Illinois Juvenile Justice Commission. Today, I do have in mind the 3 questions, but I also, in general, wanted to give an overview of who the commission is and who we are. So I have a few slides that I'm going to go through. I won't go through all of them due to time. So this is just a welcome. So the Illinois Juvenile Justice Commission, we serve as the federal agency mandated by the state advice. We are mandated by the federal. The Illinois Juvenile Justice Commission serves as the agency mandated by the governor as a state advisory group. We talk to the General Assembly and the governor and IDHS on matters of juvenile justice. We advocate and we educate on those matters. We have 4 main goals of the commission. One is we want to maintain full compliance with the core requirements of the Juvenile Justice Delinquency and Prevention Act, JJDPA, both to ensure continued access to federal funding and to ensure application of humane and effective practices with youth in contact with the system. We want to prevent or deter youth from entering the system in the first place, particularly due to unaddressed family or education or mental health issues, substance abuse, trauma, and racial disparities. And like the young woman said, she mentioned poverty. Those are issues that bring people to the system. We want to make sure that youth do not enter, that youth who do enter the system receive developmentally appropriate services, individualized, that foster appropriate accountability while building strengths and capacity with those youth. And then when the youth do leave the system, we want them to leave with positive outcomes. So how do we do this? We have a compliance monitoring that we do, and we monitor for the 4 core requirements: jail removal, deinstitutional and status offenders, racial and ethnic disparities, and sight and sound. We provide statewide juvenile justice funding through Title II funds. And right now we fund about 5 juvenile justice councils, 12 youth serving programs like nonprofits and other types of programs, 1 technical assistance provider, and 1 university partner who helps us with research and systems improvement. And we also evaluate policy and practices, and we do write white papers, and we do share our research with the General Assembly and other advocates so that they can hopefully change policies that impact the juveniles. We provide training and technical assistance to our grantees and others, and we're known for collaboration and partnership. This is just showing you our relationship to OJJDP. We have to be in compliance in order to receive the formula grants, the Title II funding, which is very important for our work. And again, we currently grant money to youth serving programs, juvenile justice councils, systems improvement, and TTAS. One particular funding area that I wanted to highlight was our juvenile justice councils. Their purpose is to implement policies and practices that improve the effectiveness of the local juvenile justice systems, reduce unnecessary juvenile justice system involvement, and reduce racial and ethnic disparities. The council, in order for you to have a council per statute, there are requirements. They would like a sheriff, the state's attorney, the public defender, the probation, and chief judge to be a part of that, as well as a county board member within the area of the council. And just what's expected of a council: provide analysis of juvenile justice delinquency problems and needs in their area, produce or update a comprehensive system map, complete a current county juvenile justice plan. So how would this council like to plan its work? What issues would you like to focus on? And then I highlighted racial and ethnic disparities. We want to ensure that racial and ethnic disparities are examined and reduced at all phases of the juvenile justice system. We identify and appoint, and we also want them to identify and appoint a youth member to serve on the council. One thing that we were proud of at the commission is we started a statewide youth advisory board. And so we have a board, I'm trying to think, I think one of our youth might be associated with Champaign County. And their job really is to get acquainted with the system and the issues, and then serve on our committees. We have 5 committees that allow the youth to participate in. And racial and ethnic disparities really is looking at the 5 decision points based on OJJDP. And just real quick, I was going to show some data, but it may not be, you may not be able to see it. But in 2020 and 2021, we did see a lot of racial and ethnic disparities across the state, especially around arrest. And when we look at disparities, I'm going to just look at the rate of arrest. So for every 1,000 Black youth, 215 of those 1,000 Black youth are arrested, whereas in 20 white youth are arrested per every 1,000, and then 24 per 1,000 for Hispanic and Latino. The other area that we have noticed is detention. While the numbers don't totally align, because that's what we're looking at, data accuracy, we have noticed that detention, there's also some disparities in detention and secure confinement. In 2021, we did see a little improvement from 2020, but not a whole lot of improvement. And these are just the ratios, just showing you that Black youth are 10 times more likely to be arrested compared to white counterparts, and then 1 times more likely to be transferred to adult court. And then 21 data is pretty telling too, 3 times more likely for adult transfer and 8 times more likely for arrest. So I'm not really going to go through all of our goals, but we are seeking collaboration, and we're definitely continuing to look for new commissioners to serve on what we call the state advisory group. And we're looking at law enforcement, and we're looking at youth. So those are kind of our 2 areas that we're looking to hopefully collaborate on. And when we start our second cohort of the Youth Advisory Board, we would love for people, counties such as Champaign County, to send us some youth who they think would be, who could serve well on this Youth Advisory Board. And then we encourage people, when we do have open funding, for you to apply for the Title II funding in those 4 areas that we fund. When it comes to, I can stop sharing. When it comes to, you know, I guess wicked, I don't know how you said it, Sam, but like wicked collaboration, we are working on the elimination of detention of 10 to 12-year-olds. So that is something that we would like to continue to collaborate on statewide, is eliminating the detention of 10 to 12-year-olds. And then also, honestly, we are dealing with a compliance issue of jail removal. Some areas are keeping youth longer than the feds are asking. The feds say youth should not be in any adult jail longer than 6 hours. And we have went over our threshold, and they did take 20% of our funding. And so we are working across the state to try to possibly change policy. So right now, state law says 12 hours that juveniles can be held. We're asking that it be aligned to the federal law of 6 hours. So those are the main issues we're working on right now. Sam, I don't know if you wanted me to elaborate at all.
Well, thank you so much. How many of you were aware of the work of the emergency commission? Andrea, I understand that you are doing some work with the University of Illinois, with the community contact, the Office of the Chancellor, is that correct?
Yes, I'm on the Community Relations Committee with Beverly from United Way.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I'm on the Community Relations Committee with Beverly from the United Way and others.
Okay, so you are actually doing some work within this local community. So
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And I know that your organization is also funding the study that Ebony right here is involved in, which is also looking at racial disparity and transfer of youth court to adult. So if you have any interest in that work, then you can please meet Ebony while she's here, or we will figure out how to connect people to you. They can find you connected. But thank you so much for that. I want to point out that when you were describing juvenile justice, one of the things that none of us described was the racial disparity that which is. I don't did I mistake? My bad. Thank you so much. But those are started. So thank you again, Julia. So what we'll do now is switch to Ms. Karen Simmons, founder of CU Trauma and Resiliency Initiative. And do you need me to repeat the question? Of course you don't.
No, I don't, but I just wanted to be sure you wanted to stay on script, right? So, all right, so I'm gonna be really efficient. My three answers, so I work with a local not-for-profit, we're focusing on, the short answer is building and equipping communities to be healing centered and to be justice centered. And we do that in a lot of different ways. And so my relationship with juvenile justice is in part really focusing on the resiliency building, the wellness, and the healing, and not necessarily the trauma piece. So we believe that the more people can know, have access to tools and resources, and when they need, have the right kind of support to network and to have a lot of different people in the village that can support them, communities are more resilient, and then the people are more and more resilient. And so we need less involvement in the juvenile justice system, and we can interrupt it. So that's question number one, and I think two. My wicked recommendation, and I thought about this because of course I saw the questions in advance, but I struggled with coming up with a simple answer for a couple different reasons. So I'm in short. So I believe the juvenile justice system is a symptom and not the issue, right? So it's a symptom of a lot of different things that go wrong in the lives of youth, families, and communities, right? So if it is a symptom, I can focus on the juvenile justice part, or I can think about all of the things that contribute. So what we know is everything from how people respond to youth in schools or at home, how they're identified, how people view them, what options are provided to them, how people see them, what do we do that causes more harm, what do we do that's healing centered, all of those interactions matter. And if we don't get that part right, we'll just be chasing symptoms all the way into adulthood. So part of my solution is helping people reimagine what they see. And that's why I talk about trauma informed, because the signs and the symptoms that many people sort of criminalize are just adaptive behaviors that come when you're experiencing adversity, but also like we don't have the right protective measures. So that's part one. And then part two, and Sam, you know, I said this, I wish, so when children are identified as having complex needs, which we know are overrepresented in the juvenile justice system, typically what we do is restrict their voice. We start disciplining, we start correcting, we start putting them in special programs, and that actually is the antithesis of what a young person needs, right? So what they need is sensory rich environments, lots of recreation and play, lots of people who love and support them, lots of opportunities. And so my wicked recommendation would be that we would just sort of, something Montessori kids, right? Where they would have opportunities to learn and grow, their brains to learn and grow, their families to learn and grow, right? So that's the vision. I don't see us getting there, so that's fine.
Before we transition, this is gonna be a little bit of a basic question. You don't have to answer. Well, just by show of hands, How many of you have either direct personal experience with juvenile justice system, in probation, court services, police, or have friend or family member that has had this? Right, thank you. Mike, please.
Hi, my name is Mike Williams. Thank you very much for having me here today. This is a terrific turnout. I know this is an area that many of you are very interested in, so I'm very happy that Sam invited me here today. As he said, I am the Director of Probation and Court Services in Champaign County. I've been with the county for, as Sam said, a long time, 30-something years. I've been in probation for a little over 20 years. The Champaign County Juvenile Probation, the Champaign County Probation Department encompasses 3 different areas. We have adult probation, juvenile probation, and we also operate a 25-bed juvenile detention center in Easter Bay. I want to talk a little bit of numbers. I don't want to get too much into the data. I have a lot of data. If anybody wants to talk about data, I'm happy to do that. In terms of number of juveniles that are under formal court order here in Champaign County right now, it's just under 90. So we have about 87, 88 minors who are currently serving a sentence of probation or court supervision under the supervision of my office. On today's date, as of this morning, we have 8 minors who are being held at our juvenile detention facility on the Easter Bay. I want to try to stay on topic 2 here. I know that time is short. Our role, the way that I see our role here in the juvenile justice system, is that we are here to help minors become successful and productive. And the way that we do that is by, first of all, identifying and then trying to help them address the need that they have identified, both the minors and their parents. We are also, it is our responsibility to help provide for the protection of the community while these minors are in our community. So in order to do that, we also address the risk factors that we have identified along with the minors and their parents. I would say that our biggest challenge, and as the director of the department, I've done many things over the years, but I'm not working with the minors on a day-to-day basis. So I talked with some of my staff and they unanimously agree that their biggest problem or biggest difficulty in working with minors is getting them to engage in the service. And there are many different reasons for why the kids and their parents don't engage in the service. I don't want to engage in any type of parent bashing or anything. Each kid is unique, each family is unique. So why they are not engaging in the services is unique to that person and that family. But that is our biggest struggle, getting them to engage in the services, both the services that we are referring them to, whether it's some of the services that Karen is referred to, mental health services, substance abuse services, those types of things that we're referring them to, or it is things like getting them to school and getting them to stay throughout the school day and get engaged in their school. So that is our biggest problem. Is getting kids to engage in school. I gave a lot of thought to the question of how what would be on my wish list. If I knew the service, I would tell you the service, but I don't know what it is.
I want to remind you that whatever your possibility is, next time you see it, and it's actually going to be working on that.
Right, exactly. But I can tell you what I think it should look like. I just need to tell you what it is. I think it needs to be something that is culturally competent. It needs to be accessible. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about is, finding those services that are meeting kids and their families where they are. And that's not limited to their physical location. When I talk about where they are, that encompasses a whole lot of things, not just their physical location. We need services that are going to be accepted by the minors and their families. So just because I think it's a great idea for them, and I refer them to that, if it's not something that they're accepting, they're not going to engage in. The services need to be respectful, and they need to recognize both the diversity of the clients that we serve, as well as the uniqueness of each of the individual clients that we're working with. We have 5 probation officers in our juvenile division, and I think that the officers in my department do a fantastic job of seeing each of their clients as individuals. They don't look at them as a 22 JD, whatever their number might be. They really do see these kids as individuals. They take a lot of time to learn as much as they can about the individual clients and their parents. So I think that we need services that recognize that as well, that they recognize that each of our clients are unique. So again, that gives you an idea of what I think the services should look like, but I don't know exactly what it is. I think we in Champaign County are very fortunate. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago that I was at with Sam, and I said, and I really do believe that Champaign County has a wealth of services. We are, unlike some areas of the state that don't have the services available, we have those here. We don't always do the best job coordinating our services or talking amongst ourselves, but those services are out there. So the more we can do to learn more about what is out there and what we can offer to our clients and our families, will be better off.
All right, thank you. We have a reading point by someone who is challenging a bit to describe the report and meet those needs around juvenile justice. I'm just going to raise a couple of questions, not necessarily the answer, and then I also want to comment on this. You both use terms. Like you use the term risk factor, and Karen used the term protective factors. And I don't know if either one of you, I'm asking well, Karen, would you take that a little bit? But before you take that, I also want to say, in my 30 years of being in Champaign County, many years of working in juvenile justice, this is the first public conversation that I've had with the probation about this conversation. So the second question is, how is it that we're looking at what do people probation officers or people in your position that need in order to do more community work? I don't want to answer, but Karen, would you talk about risk for a second?
So I'm gonna do, so risk factors, this is based on evidence and research. So growing up, having economic challenges, right? So I like to think about adverse community environment. So not having enough food, not having your basic needs, growing up in a household where there's domestic violence. And again, I think that we're risk factor. These are just sort of vulnerabilities that we know change you. Being a person of color, unfortunately, isn't a risk factor, but it's one of those things that has people and systems identify you as having problematic behavior, feeling under supported. So so we know that there are some things that change you, impact you structurally, environmentally, interpersonally, that make you more vulnerable, more likely to connect with the criminal justice system. And I even think that word is problematic, but right, that system. And then there are things that we know that buffer, right, that kind of help even if you are in those environments that make things better, that interrupt, that can, because although I know that there are biases that seem like all youth of color who grew up in adverse environments are going to end up or have some involvement in the criminal justice system. That's a lie. Most people make it out, do fine, recover, are resilient, live and breathe. And so what we know that separates those who become vulnerable or not is that interplay between what factors protect them, what resources are available, how people see and treat them, and then the vulnerability.
How you guys doing? I'm Mario Sayers, I'm the executive director of Anti-Violence Connected. I see juvenile jumping from a different place. I was incarcerated when I was 17 years old for the crime of first-degree murder. So the system for me is not statistics. It's real life. Not the numbers, it's not the emotional about it, it's real life. But it's not the stuff that we see. It's the kids we lose. Bring them together every day. And so the conversation that we have now is a conversation we've had for 50 years. So it's not about the system that we're talking about. About their own. We have to be honest about that first, that these things that we're studying over and over again is not working. Because we're studying the kids with better things. System juvenile justice. I went to prison at 17, I came home at 34, but I didn't get the job that I wanted to study my life and my family because of my background. I can't be assaulted for some of these problems that's going on 1 years because of my background. The system, juvenile justice, we're losing kids younger and younger. You go to jail now, they're 17, I'm 8 to see world. They're losing their lives in prison. We talk about the systems that we know continually don't work to help us. Who's don't work to help us? You think about 13, 12, 13 years. Who's struggling these things conversations in the record. And so we look at the numbers, the people, and data, as analysis, as guinea pigs to figure out what the problem is. But we have yet to actually young people in the community that suffer through it, and who have been resilient, as Karen said, who come out of those kind of fights, what was it that helped you get them? How do you communicate this to the same young people that never had an opportunity to get these same kind of lessons that you may have been given? So when you think about juvenile justice, you gotta ask the real question, what are you talking about? Are you talking about helping these kids? Or are you talking about the teams and systems that we have known not to work for us ever? So those are the real questions that I would like to ask, and be in those places where the system leaders and the people who can make policy can explain to me if they continue to see the same decline in our government. The data we got for 60 years haven't helped you figure out what the solution is there. So maybe we should try something new. Maybe we should take these young people who have lived through this kind of crisis and see how they feel. I have gentlemen that are very great friends of mine who, after serving 28 years in prison, were exonerated. On the same evidence that got them convicted, they told them after they were kids that now you're free. But they can't go get a good job, they can't go work for school, but you told me 28 years of my life, that you want me to understand what your potential is. We have real live human beings that are doing these same fights every day. They can't sit in this meeting. I'm blessed that my brother Sam came to the city. Because there's people in the room that can actually make this. The young people, I encourage you, you fight for something, fight for the heart. Fight for to make something to jump on this, or fight for to maintain the status. If you have to real about what's going on with our young people, put your heart in it. Just go there and it will beat you there. But change only comes after fight. We still losing that, but we understand what they do. We're still losing young people. I went to work with one of my young men on the college. First day, he called it gun case. He called it gun case. His brand and killed in running. The day before he left to go to college, he called it gun case. He goes to work, the first thing they asked us was, we'll let you cop out for 2 years for baby. He's in college. That penalty will prevent anything that he do once he gets his degree. But that was the first thing that they said to him. They never asked him, what is your life about? They see him as the same young man that we have already stereotyped for the labor woman, and we throw him away. I speak on it because I'm one of those grown kids. I am him. And I've been home 2 years, but I was in prison, but they don't never talk about it this 7 years. I got 4 degrees, I wrote 4 books, I'm about 4 months, came home about the rest of the night. And I found in my pocket, they can really understand. They have so much that I can think of, I don't really need it. Well, so let, I appreciate the thing, but we need help. We need for real people to stand up about what's going on for real. If they don't know the truth, you won't know the truth. I can come in and give you all kinds of tips and numbers but I can tell you, I know a lot of kids in that. I can tell you, I know a lot of girls and kids who have an easier person, there ain't nobody helping them. I can tell you, I know a lot of young men that's these programs is not leading to the direction of good. It's a throwaway. There's only one program in this town or two in this town that are under 40, and that's Youth Build a Dream. They take the kids that have been thrown away and making something out of them. Making something real love and care for them. No one is really doing that, but taking that approach to this problem that we face. And all the kids look like me. All of them look like me. So I come different every time it's not good, smoking mirrors. I want somebody to help me stay in my kids. Let me connect with the system that the children are. From educating to the justice system. Let me change it.
So, thank you so much for that. You know, I have said to you, Maurice, directly, so many times that, it's important to see what young people do. I also want to say that it is so important for all of these different perspectives on all of these issues to be in a room, to be public, so that we can sort of listen and hear and think together. So join me in thanking our four thought leaders. We have about 4 minutes, and we'll take questions or comments from anyone. All right, let me do this. If you're a student, would you stand up just for a second? They were just about to leave. If you're a student, would you stand up? Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, have a seat. If you are an activist or a community leader around issues of youth and families, stand up. Stand up. So Lori Britt runs a program called the Youth Assessment Center in Champaign. It supports young people and families. If you are a service provider, would you please stand up? I was trying to pick that Eddie out. Is a director coming here and show us on. What am I missing? You are an educator, a teacher, a professor. Please stand up. Yes, Chuck Cowler. Yeah, thank you so much. All right, thank you. All right, so we have about 10 minutes. Love to open it up for questions or any follow-up comments from any of our thought leaders.
Let's say you mentioned earlier that what we're dealing with is a symptom. And one of the symptoms you referenced was discipline. And so I have a narrow sense of things, so I don't have a broad question. But discipline sounds to me like a school. And I wonder, is there another way that school may be marshaled to deal with this issue of criminal justice and to try to switch their view from discipline to symptomatic, and how would they employ the confirmation strategy so that we're not just doing discipline, which will almost guarantee that we can figure to the problem in the future.
So, and I think any of us can answer this question, and I think it sort of hints to something that we want more. So, right, the education system knows what best practice is, right, they know what they should be doing. There's just not ever been the social, political will to do what is best, right? So we keep putting Band-Aids and retrofitting a system that we know doesn't work for Black and brown kids. I mean, as Maureen said, we have 60 years of research and data to prove it. And I think it has to do with a couple of things, right? I know it's not sexy, but it has to do with structural inequalities because of bias and racism, right? It's safer to label, pathologize, demonize. And then increasingly, and this is not the point of this conversation, so I'm gonna stop talking, but the economic benefits that come from having a system that fail a certain percentage of the population, that feed into other systems, I think reinforce the structure, right? And so I think that there's there are economic values that keep criminalizing kids and families, that keep people employed. And so to adopt new ways of being, thinking, and behaving requires people addressing some of their issues of racism and classism. Right, they're gonna have to really think about what it means to live in a free and just society where everybody has the right to be, become, and belong. And as long as we don't really want that, we only want one expression of humanity, we're gonna keep these systems in place.
So let me ask you, it was great that you asked that question. So the ABC framework was designed specifically for that, to be inside the schools, to aid in the issues inside the schools. The founder of the ABC, the Terry Nance, and the principal of the high school, he created this framework for that sole reason, but it's being impeded. We can't operate under those same framework that we said before, for whatever reason it is. Again, when I say that the structural systematic stuff, that stops things happening. So the framework that we created is designed to get inside the school, because those are what we know how to keep them. But the school won't allow you to put them in. So that's another blockade. You can't do the things that you know that's necessary. So you got to think innovative. Right, this guy's a 37-year-old person. So 20 years ago, he knew these students. He knows that he moved in the same ghetto that he came from to become a college professor, become a principal. So his ideals are important because he's speaking really for himself as a kid going through the system. But if you reach to a certain level, you can't do the things that you may know can change things, then what is the next step? I can't go as far as the system will allow me. So even with me, I'm not a part of the system, I'm an independent person, but I can't go as far as the system will allow me because I'm not someone that's part of that fold. When we get past that and really start thinking about the people involved in, systems can be changed. If they can't be changed, then we'll forever live and have the same conversation and dialogue about the same thing. There's something in place that's stopping the food chain. So we question what that is. That's where we find the real resolution. What's stopping or impeding something that we know that helps save lives? What's wrong with focusing on those 12, 13% of kids or people that we know are failing? The 88% already have almost, that's why they're succeeding. So we losing 20% of the population. Why not take time to focus on that and see if it's simple that a better distance? Right? If we do that, everything grows from that standpoint. We're working in unison proactively to change what the system is already needed to be. And that's in every system, even in the justice system. We see these things happening, especially with our young kids, where the track record starts when they're in kindergarten. Right? They start a track record and then into student schools, they be labeled bad behavior or IEP, learning disabilities. And so those kind of documentation, probably the things that are going on in their home, kind of fuel the outrage in the way that a lot of us are getting as we grow. So if I get to a place where I do see them and their help is not there again, it only fuels me more. Now realize that. So it only fuels me more. I become with the image or I become the person that society has deemed to be. And so it's beneficial for society because it's from the table, but it's not beneficial for the generation that's going through. So we already have a frame before, we just have to find a way to get it implemented. If not the schools, the jail, that's the next place we going. Because a lot of young people are in jails. So we can't get into the school to say, we'll follow in jail and try to get them the same message in the jail. So when they come home, they better when they come home. They'll be better when they come home.
Thank you. Other questions, reflections, comments? No, please.
Yeah, so I was interested by the point that you made that, you know, for example, they took away some parents' KPS and when they get into this time, it's very hard for them when they get a job or all these other resources that other things they have. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, I was American myself, and I remember asking them, an American friend of mine, why is it so hard for, you know, ex-felons to integrate into society? And he informed me that it is harder because they want to encourage other people to commit crimes, because it was easier for those people who come out of prison to integrate into society. It just encourage other people to, you know, commit crimes because they know that the consequences aren't as big. What would you say to that? You know, the idea that if we allow these people to integrate into society, we just encourage other people. We couldn't tell other people to commit crimes. That was the reason I couldn't understand it, but I like to get a voice.
Well, a lot of this is a myth, right? Because I was able to find employment when I came home, when I worked in restaurants, that's what I did. Subsequently, I ended up finding, but I have 4 degrees, like I told you before. I couldn't get a job in no field because they say I don't have work. So those degrees don't mean nothing. So a lot of us believe in the possibility. Our goal was to go to school to try to get equipped with what we call it, get as many tools as we can in our toolbox. So when we do come home, we know we're coming home on the next day. If you got many tools in your toolbox, you can find somewhere to fit in. But it's difficult. It discourages a lot of guys doing, and there's some people that sit in prison and don't do nothing. They sit there and play dominoes and slaves on it. But the majority of us, a lot of time, all of us have come home with a different plan, different mission, and a lot of different intelligence that we can apply to any situation. I don't know about the discouraging of people not being able to get jobs, but it is discouraging to people like us who really want to come up and do something. We can't do it. There's always something that's going to impede. Only jobs really want to get to, restaurant jobs, factory jobs. You got to know somebody to get some kind of business job. You can earn those 6 figures and do all those things. So that's kind of disheartening. And then when you think about now, we talk about juvenile justice. We got young men going to jail at 12. They come home at 23. They have required all the kind of rules they need to do juvenile system, but at 23, they still gonna be stagnant for the rest of their life. It's still gonna be stuck in there, they're still gonna be ostracized. It's still gonna be blocked out of different entities. It's still gonna be kind of held back. So those are, if I can do my future society, and you still gonna come home, I'm getting my future society. Now we need to get back into society the way that I need to. And so how do we fix that?
And I just want to offer, that's a history question. So if you look at the history of how we got a criminal justice system, there are values, right, that are embedded in all of our decisions. So if we believe that, again, we lock up people, we have the death penalty, and that will deter people, because that's what we think how those crimes happen. And it's based on some religion and some, again, racial bias and some fears and a whole bunch of things. But I think that knowing the history of how we got here is important about dismantling it. And there's a lot embedded into the structure of America, right? Our criminal justice, from policing to social work, to all of those systems that we have to really critically examine. And we had a moment right after George Floyd where we started to evaluate our system, and then we're not doing that anymore because right, we're back to normal. But there's some cultural values that actually aren't based in science, aren't based in evidence, aren't based in research, but become self-perpetuating. Right, so if I believe, right, bad people do bad things, and if I tell you, and you can, like, first of all, there's an idea that people sort of plan crimes, and that's just not how most crimes happen, they're not like, and so all of those things are just bad, but they become self-reinforcing.
Well, thank you all very much. I'm not going to end the conversation, but I am going to note that it is 1 o'clock. We will be back here next Friday with another lovely set of thought leaders to continue this conversation. I want to point out, again, I think it is very important to get people in the room who have deep insight and experience around these very wicked and challenging issues. As frustrating as it is to be hammering away at the same stone, we do learn and we do grow. So would you join me once again in thanking you? And you are welcome to hang around if they are available and ask some questions. Thank you so much. And thank you to the board.
Tell people what to anticipate next week.
So next week, we will have another set of 4 different thought leaders. I'm hoping that we will have several thought leaders from maybe the state's attorney's office, public defender's office, some other community members, school people. So please feel free to come out again. Thank you so much.